I think more consultation and networking would be very useful here. Structured meet the buyer type events can help break down these barriers, and I think training on the part of the suppliers and the purchasers as well would be very useful. That would help form business relationships which would benefit the economy in general. I think costs can be driven up by the increasing demand for detailed information from the supplier base. I think that timescales have increased rather than decreased in the procurement process in general. And I think sometimes tender documentation is overcomplicated, which is a bit of a barrier to those with lower literacy and ICT skills. I think this depends quite heavily on the definition of value for money, which can vary very heavily from process to process. I think being slightly cynical that purchasers sometimes use value for money as a selection criteria to choose a particular supplier that they want to work with. I think it's very important to define value for money parameters in tender documentation very clearly so that the supplier base can respond in intelligent fashion to those criteria. I think adoption of supply management technologies would be a positive step. We as a supplier spend entirely too much time filling in very similar pre-qualification and tender documents, and some standardization of that information across the different procuring agencies would save a lot of time and effort on our part. For my part, I make a no-bid decision, as we call it, when the required products and services differ significantly from our core services. I think sometimes very onerous pre-qualification processes are a barrier for SMEs and do prevent them from choosing to have a crack at a particular tender. I think we do see examples of particularly disability and racial or sex discrimination brought up in pre-qualifications and tenders, and I think that's a good thing in general. It's a legislative requirement for suppliers to abide by, and I don't think anybody would argue that it's not important to prevent discrimination in those areas.